Listen, anyone tells you you should already be crushing it with your 2021 goals less than a week into the year, come find me, I'll crush them. We don't have the time, energy, or attention for that ish this year. Just kidding! Because in the Work Brighterverse, we are all about nonviolent imagery for our success. So in reality, I'll just win them over with pop culture references and witty remarks. Hello and Happy New Year. I am Brittany Berger, the founder of WorkBrighter.co, and we are a digital media company and community that gives you the tools, training, and support to help you escape hustle culture and its perpetual burnout cycle. And today I want to talk to you about New Year's planning, or more specifically, planning for the near future when the near past has been a little bit of a shit show.
It was a shit show.
If you're already a member of the WorkBrighter community, you know that my own approach to planning and productivity and a lot of work stuff was shaken up in 2016 when my chronic illnesses and mental health were in a situation where I could barely work at all. And if you're not a member of the community yet, check the links below to join us. Anyway, back then, I loved planning. I always have, I always will, but honestly, I was objectively bad at it because I wasn't creating plans that I could actually stick to or keep, and so nothing ever actually came of them. And the problem wasn't with the doing, the problem was with the planning. The plans just weren't realistic or doable at the time. I was physically capable of working maybe 20 hours a week, but I was creating these elaborate, jam-packed, beautifully color-coded plans that added up to 60 hours worth of work per week. Those plans were just setting me up for failure, no matter how beautifully color-coded they were. But since I do love planning, and I am type A all the way, and my biggest dream is to have a planning party with Leslie Knope and Amy Santiago,
who's ready for some nonstop, totally scheduled fun.
When I realized that planning process wasn't working, instead of just giving up on planning and trying to go with spontaneity, I found a new approach to planning. That process is what is now called the practical planning process, and I firmly believe that it is the only planning process that is suited for 2021. After 2020, this year calls for drastically empathetic and forgiving and realistic planning and productivity. And that is what practical planning is. The practical planning framework is based off of 4 principles. 1, creating containers based off your real capacity. 2, building in time for all of your existing commitments. 3, planning just as much as the container fits. And 4, breaking down big projects based on snowman project planning. So let's dig into each. First, you want to look at your plan as a container, and you want to base the size or capacity for that container based on your actual capacity for work and other commitments. A big mistake with planning, especially at the beginning of the year when we're feeling really dreamy and enthusiastic and optimistic, is to really overestimate how much time we have and underestimate how long it takes to do the things we want to do. So as a result, we end up over planning ourselves and overcommitting ourselves, and then not pacing our work and falling behind on the plan so quick and checking it all by the end of February because you are just burnt out. Or am I the only one that's happened to? Please let me know in the comments I'm not the only one that's happened to. I have also talked about this in my video on over planning, so definitely check that out if this has happened to you. So the first phase of the practical planning project is to revisit your existing time and figure out how much time your work actually takes. Revisit how much time you actually spend on different areas and responsibilities in your life, like work, family, housework, health, all the good stuff. And go through maybe the past month or two and think about how much time you spent on each of those things. Or, since the past month was the holidays, it might be a little bit different, but just think about in a normal month, or at least this normal, how much time do you spend on each of those areas? And you can figure that out by going through all the different tasks that you do on the regular, thinking about it. Think hard, but don't treat this as like a test or exam. Just figure out as much as your memory can figure out. And in the planning workshops we do inside of the WorkWriter Clubhouse, for this we use something called a time audit exercise. You can find a link to the exercise in the description below, but it's basically just going through the past month or so of your work and going through and figuring out how you actually spend your time. This helps you see not just how much time you actually have, but how much of it is already accounted for by doing things that you want to continue into the new year. Because again, it is so easy to overestimate how much free time we have. And so then we create inaccurate plans based on that inaccurate capacity. Like I said, I used to accidentally plan 60-hour work weeks for myself. Every time we go through this workshop and this exercise in the clubhouse, we find another member doing the same thing. It is so common. So this exercise really helps you check yourself before you wreck yourself. It helps you realize what the containers you're working with actually look like. Once you've done that, you can move on to step 2, building in your existing time commitments. This is where you start building a plan for the future based on what you just learned about the past. And the beauty of practical planning is that this type of planning can be adapted for any time period. So you can use it to plan a whole year, although I'm not recommending it. You can use it to plan a quarter or a month or even just a week. But before we start slotting in new projects in the existing steps, it's time to think a little bit more about your existing commitments, particularly how long they're going to take in the coming months. We are creatures of habit. So much of our lives revolve around routine, and if our routines are intentional and enjoyable, there is nothing wrong with that. So in the overall practical productivity approach, which I'll talk about a little bit more later, the goal is just to have as many of those types of routines as possible. So start thinking how you can take the tasks that you discovered in your time audit and grouping them into different routines. For example, I always recommend most people lump all of their checking email and other admin done on the computer into what we like to call in the clubhouse a productivity power hour. Also think about ongoing activities like cleaning your physical space, maintaining any other digital stuff, content creation, ongoing meetings or calls, even time that you want to spend talking to your friends and family. Figure out how long or how much time you want to spend on those activities in the next, say, 3 months, and account for that in your container. And once those activities are in your container, you can move on to step 3. Step 3 is planning just as much as your containers fit and no more. I'm serious. And this is finally where you start slotting in new work that you're going to create or new things that you're going to do. And note how different this is from most planning processes found in traditional productivity and hustle culture. A lot of those planning processes have you start with just picking a deadline, picking it out of thin air, just deciding when you want to finish a project based on nothing. But like we've been over at the beginning of this video, it's more likely than not you are picking that date based on overestimated free time and underestimated time commitments. As a result, the date that you're likely to pick when you start that way is likely going to be totally off base from reality. So practical planning is about being realistic and basing things off of what's already happening in our lives. So we start with how much time we have, then we look at how much free time that leaves us and slot in new work accordingly. So you want to figure out an actually workable, usable, practical project deadline based on the containers we've built for ourselves. And you do that using everything that you've learned in steps 1 and 2. After that, it is time to build a snowman. That is step 4 of WorkWriter's practical planning process. And is it irony that by the time I finally get around to making a video about the snowman planning process, I live somewhere where I will never see snow? If you are recognizing a little bit more of an echo around me and a new set, that is because I just moved from New York to LA. So bye-bye, snowman, except for metaphors like this. So the big things that you want to accomplish, I want you to think of them as snowmen, but like not just any old snowman, like a beautiful, artful snow sculpture, like in that episode of Gilmore Girls, where the one guy even had the power tools. So things like starting a new business or moving to a new city City, hey, those are giant snowmen. And the really essential, important projects required to build that snowman, those are the snowballs. You won't have the finished picture without them. So for the example of starting a business, that might be things like launching your website or launching your first product. And for moving, some of my own snowballs so far have been things like finding and leasing an apartment, coordinating the actual physical move from one side of the country to the other, furnishing the place, and a lot more because I am very overwhelmed right now. This isn't about me. And then those projects, those snowballs, those are made of even tinier components. Obviously, the snowflakes. And the snowflakes are the individual tasks that you need to do to accomplish the project. So for something like moving, that's going to be things like forwarding my mail, updating the online shipping addresses on my online shopping websites, updating my driver's license to a new state and stuff like that. For something like creating a new product in your business, that might be booking or having or analyzing different customer research interviews. It might be things like creating the prototype or beta version, things like that. And then finally, you have the accessories, the nice to haves, like the carrot nose and the twig arms and the top hat, because every snowman is better with a top hat and it's fun to do this. Those are the things that are like the nice to haves, but they're more decoration. They're not necessities or make or breaks to the project. So you'll do them if you have the time, if you have the space left in your container. And you're always revisiting that container to see how much space is left in the other two parts of the practical productivity process that come after planning. So that is the practical planning process, one that is based off of your actual life and your actual capacity instead of an ideal world that we don't exist in. It is realistic and flexible so that it and you can adapt to whatever is going on in your work, your life, or the world. Steps 1 and 2, make sure of it. And even if your initial plan ends up not being totally realistic, that's what the other two parts of the practical productivity process, do and review, are for. It is like a cycle. Plan, do, review every week, every month, every whatever. Let me know if you'd like videos on those parts of the process, or if you want a video on any one step of the process I just went over for you today. If you want a whole snowman video, let me know. And yeah, that's it. I firmly believe between the actual features of this process that make it so adaptable and flexible, along with the just forgiving and empathetic mindset that everything in the work writer community is built with, this is the move for 2021. If you're gonna plan in advance, I think this way has to be it. So if you are going to try, let me know in the comments below. If you're gonna do something else and that works for you better, awesome. I wanna hear about that too. So also, comments below. And if you are interested in going through this practical planning process live digitally with me and a bunch of other productive unicorns inside the Workwriter Clubhouse, we do have workshops and planning parties for this process regularly. And if you're watching this live, the next one's coming up in just a few weeks. So check out the link in the description below if you're interested in joining us for that. We would love to have you. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to check out my other practical planning and productivity videos.